Micron stock analysis. Is it time to buy? Is it time to sell? Is it time to hold? Here at the Rutherford Report, we dig into the data to find out. As always, hit that like button, subscribe, and click that bell notification. Next, click on my channel bio, follow my link to discover the best investment to buy now. How do I know what the best investment to buy now is? I watch where billionaires move their money. And the people who subscribe and get on my newsletter will be the first to find out what I uncover. Don't miss out. Go to rutherfordwealthreport.com. Real quick, before we get into this, I am not a registered financial advisor. Do not listen to a guy like me. Statistics say you will lose all of your money. Micron is one of the leading manufacturers of memory. Now, memory is required for the digital economy. Everything we do has memory in it. I'm talking about your cell phones, your computers, your autonomous cars, the robots that are going to be coming, and the AI data centers, and the memory for all the data centers running the internet. So if you're betting on the digital economy, Micron is a key player in the digital economy. I'm not sure the digital economy could function without it. So is it a good buy? Is it a sell? Let's look at what the analysts are saying to start. So Citibank rates it a buy. Wells Fargo rates it a buy. And UBS rates it a buy. JP Morgan rates it a buy. Morgan Stanley rates it a hold. So most analysts, like the analysts from Bank of America, are rating it a hold. Most of them are rating it a buy. But let's dig under the hood, look at the data, and figure out if it's a buy or a sell. The first factor I look for is profitability, because I'm investing for the long term. So I want a company that can make money today, can make money tomorrow, and it can make money in the future. It needs to be profitable to do that. If it's losing money, it's going to go bankrupt. And Charlie Munger taught me that the big money is in waiting. So I need a company that can be profitable, and I can wait for it to get bigger and bigger and bigger. How does Micron make all of its money? Well, they're selling all of the memory, not all of it, but a huge portion of it for the data centers. The AI data centers, the servers, all the cloud, the PCs, the PC you're watching this on, the mobile phone you're watching this on, all of your electronics, all of them use memory, including your car. You got chips in cars. We're going to have more and more chips because we're going to have more and more autonomous cars. And there are all these sensors. They're all going to need memory. So memory is everywhere. And this is why Micron is extremely profitable. Let's look at their historic profitability. So I'm over here on macro trends just to give you this nice handy dandy graph. One thing about the memory market is it is very cyclical. Sometimes it makes a lot of money. Other times it doesn't make so much because a company like Micron is continually investing more money to make the latest and greatest memory. And also on the consumer side, you buy a computer, you buy a phone, and some of that money goes right to Micron's bottom line. Then for a year or two, you don't need a phone, but then you need to buy it again. You need the next latest thing, and people are always upgrading. Technology is always getting better and better. So guess who's benefiting? Micron. And you can see this. They have waves of a massive profitability, including back in 2018 when in a single quarter, they made $4 billion. Now, of course, some quarters they do better, some quarters they do worse. But overall, this is a company that historically has been making a lot of money. Now, recently, we had such a downturn in consumer electronics after all of the money that got sent out from the plague and people bought all the stuff they needed to buy. Micron started to lose some money, but now that the AI ramp up is really starting again, they're making massive amounts of money again, $4 billion. In the trailing 12 months. And of course, the market is expecting a lot more to come. But let's look at this. So they're profitable, but sometimes they're not profitable. So we got to look under the hood to look at their management of their cash to see if there's any danger. Well, instead of looking at each thing line by line, let's just look at their long-term debt. They've got 13 almost $14 billion in long-term debt, and they have $8 billion cash on hand. So they could pay off a huge portion of their debt today if they wanted to. They're also making a lot of money. So I'm not too concerned. They're profitable and they're not at risk of bankruptcy today. So that marks the first check mark in the thing that I look for. The next thing I look for is a company that has a strong economic moat, because as a long-term investor, Warren Buffett taught me that a strong economic moat is extremely important to an investor's success. Why? Because if you don't have a strong economic moat, whatever advantage you have will be competed away and other companies will come and they'll eat your lunch. And then eventually you'll either not make a lot of money or you'll go out of business. So does Micron have a great economic moat? Well, the largest companies in the global memory market are Samsung Electronics, Micron Technology, and SK Hynix, or Hynix, however you pronounce that, Hynix. And my point in all of this is Micron is one of the major players. So, of course, these other companies Micron can compete with, but it's not that likely that a brand new memory manufacturer is going to spring up today and take over the market, because Micron has billions of dollars that they can deploy in building the latest and greatest technology, and that is actually what they're doing. So one thing I want to point out with the economic moat, in this investors might not realize. If you think about Samsung and SK Hynix, they are not companies based in the United States. Micron is the leading memory manufacturer who is a United States company. And this is why President Biden, in the CHIPS Act, gave Micron $6 billion. See, Micron is investing approximately $50 billion to build a domestic U.S. leading-edge memory manufacturing facility. And they're doing that in upstate New York. And the government is giving them money to do it. So I can't imagine a stronger moat than having the CHIPS Act and the government say, well, chips are important, we need memory, let's give Micron money so that they can manufacture in the United States. In fact, I think that the message out of Washington is that chips are of strategic importance. So this gives a company that's a U.S. company a massive economic moat that can be protected by the government. The government's giving them free money to protect that moat. That's really fantastic if you are a Micron investor. The next thing I look for is growth potential. Growth potential is extremely important because I want to make an investment and I want the company to go out there and I want it to grow. I want it to make me more and more money so I can do other things. I can sit at home and enjoy my life. And if it's not growing, well, you're dying. And that's why having a massive growth potential is extremely important in anything that I want to invest in. Does Micron have growth potential? Well, I think Micron has some of the most massive growth potential. And here is why. Well, what's the hottest thing? AI. And NVIDIA is the leader in AI. So Micron is mass producing memory chips for use in NVIDIA's AI semiconductors. They've got this partnership going on. It's for their HBM memory. So this is massive growth potential. AI is huge. It's getting bigger and bigger. And Micron seems to be NVIDIA's preferred memory person or memory company because they keep doing it. See, there's another article that came out. Micron stock rises after report that NVIDIA SOCAM supply deal. So this is the latest and greatest memory for the next generation of what's happening next. And I don't really need to know the details. All I need to know is that NVIDIA is continuing to give Micron their business. This means Micron is going to sit on a windfall of profits, and there's a lot of growth potential here. The reason I say I don't need to know all the details is because if I start predicting the exact future, like 3-5 years out, then I'm just going to look like an idiot when it doesn't work that way. So I don't believe in precise predictions. I just want to know where the market is going And I want to understand, like, really simply, is this a good thing to invest in? And I think in the future, there's going to be a lot more electronics. Do you think there's going to be a lot more electronics? If you don't, you probably shouldn't invest in Micron. But it's pretty obvious, it's pretty simple that if we have more electronics, well, we're going to need more memory. And Micron is the king of memory manufacturers in the US. So just looking at the potential growth for memory, well, apparently it's going to grow at a CAGR of 7.6% or a CAGR of 4%. But they also think that high bandwidth memory is expected to grow rapidly at 26%. And that lines up with all of the data center projections. And if we're going to get more and more AI, we're going to have huge demand for this high-speed memory for the AI data centers. In fact, you got things like the Stargate project coming out that the U.S. government plans to help invest $500 billion in AI infrastructure in the United States. And that AI infrastructure is going to need tons and tons of memory. So where do you think that memory is going to come from? Is it going to come from a Korean supplier? Is it going to come from Samsung? Where is it going to come from? Most likely, a large portion of it is going to come from Micron. So we're talking about billions and billions of dollars coming Micron's way. The next factor I look for is alignment. I need the company's management and CEO to be in alignment with me as a shareholder. I learned this lesson from Charlie Munger. He said, show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome. If the CEO isn't incentivized to make the stock go up, well, as a stockholder, that's a bad situation. But if he's incentivized to make the stock go up because he owns a bunch of stock, well, that's probably going to turn out well for me as the investor. Alignment is very important. So one of the first things I like to look at is what is Micron doing with their shares? Are they massively diluting shareholders or are they not? Now, I understand many technology companies, they give shares out as options to pay their employees above and beyond their base salary. So that's part of it. And also memory is a cyclical business. So you can see here, sometimes Micron buys back a lot of its shares. Other times it needs to issue shares. This is in a combination with the fact that the business is cyclical probably, and the fact that they got to give themselves shares because they got to be adequately compensated. But what I'm looking at here is the shares are pretty flat, so it doesn't alarm me in any way, like there's not a huge buildup of shares diluting me. So that looks pretty good. Now, if I look at the SEC Form 4 to understand what the insiders are doing, because the insiders can tell me a lot about a stock. And you can see that the insiders are typically, just over the last 16 years, they are compensated with stock, and they really tend to sell a lot of stock when Micron is super expensive. They don't sell stock when it's super cheap. And then you can really see the memory cycles right here when the insiders are selling. So right now, if I look at it, insiders think that the stock is kind of cheap, where last year they thought it was extremely expensive and there was more insider selling than ever before. So this is interesting to look at. Now, what's most important when it comes to alignment, I like to look at who's captaining the ship. And Sanjay Mehrotra, not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Well, he's Indian, he's not Spanish, so I may be pronouncing that wrong. But Sanjay, he is the president and CEO. And you can see that he owns 1 million shares in Micron. I love this because if the CEO owns no shares, that's a huge red flag for me because he's probably going to do something that's not in my interest. Where if he owns shares in the company, well, he is motivated to make those shares go up. So as a shareholder, I'm going to probably benefit. And that is something that I love to see when looking at a company. Now, you can see a long time ago, back in 2012, he was selling heavily. Then for years and years, he didn't. And then last year, when the stock was incredibly high, he sold a ton of stock, and he's back to not selling stock. So that's interesting, but what's most important is he owns stock and he has skin in the game. Now, Micron also does buybacks strategically, so they do buybacks, then they pause buybacks depending on their cash flow and depending probably on where the market is. They seem to be on top of it. So that tells me they're pretty in alignment with shareholders. The next factor I look for is strong management. If the CEO is constantly changing, if he has no experience, well, you don't want the ship's captain not to know how to pilot the ship. So common sense tells me that as an investor, I need someone who's going to captain the ship into the future. He not only has skin in the game, but he's capable of doing it. Does Micron have a strong management? Well, Sanjay Mehrotra, not sure if I'm pronouncing that right again, he is leading Micron. So when I'm looking at management, what I'm looking for is this someone new? Is this someone who has experience? Is this someone who has skin in the game? He does have skin in the game. Well, Sanjay founded SanDisk, which, if you don't remember, those are those little memory cards that go in everything. And then I think SanDisk was bought by Western Digital. But what's important to me is looking at his resume. So he's got 35 years of experience in the semiconductor memory industry. And what's even more important to me is he co-founded SanDisk. So he is a founder. He's not a bureaucratic sort of guy who is just runs around being CEOs of different types of companies. He's a founder. He's leading this company, and he led other companies, and I'm going to imagine that he's going to treat Micron pretty well. Of course, he's been at it for years and years now. In 2017, he became CEO. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. In 2019, I'm reading the wrong date here. In 2019, I guess Mark here retired in 2017. Well, and then he was named Chief Executive Officer. So it's a little... Oh, this is chairman of the semiconductor industry. What's my point? My point here is that I was reading the dates wrong, but he's been in there for years and years and years. He's not some new, unproven guy. So this really marks the checklist off of my checklist here, saying, yeah, I think that we probably have some strong management. I'm not seeing red flags here. All I'm doing is looking for is red flags. Finally, is the investment undervalued? Warren Buffett taught me that price is what you pay and value is what you get. So if I overpay for a company, well, it doesn't matter how much growth it has if it doesn't have enough growth to overcome a super high price. So I want to get a good deal, because if I get a good deal, then it's more likely that I'm going to make more money. So the very first thing I'm doing when I'm looking at a investment, I'm trying to understand, is it cheap or is it expensive? Now, Micron is in the memory industry, so it's cyclical. You can see that since 2013, it's had some spikes up, some spikes down, some spikes up, and this repeats repeatedly. It's very obvious when you look at it. Now, of course, because I'm saying it's obvious and look at it, other people are going to understand that, and then the cycle is going to change a little bit. But it very much looks to me like we are in a potential expensive area. So how can I look at that, and why do I think so? Well, fundamentally, if you look inside their report, they have their compute and networking segment, which is up 4%, and I think their HBM revenue is up massively, like 50%. But their storage is down 20%, their mobile is down 30%, and their embed is down 3%. So this is why I have to be cautious, because sometimes everyone gets excited, they pile in. So even if you got the long-term trend right, if you get the short-term trend wrong, you could lose some money if you enter this stock at the wrong time. So this is why I'm looking at these cycles and trying to figure out if it's cheap or expensive. And the way that I found to do that with Micron is looking at the price to book ratio. Price to book ratio is just a metric where we're comparing the size of the company to its book value. So really, it's just the market capitalization divided by the company's total book value from its balance sheet. Now, the reason I like to use this metric here is because it shows us a fantastic pattern. So you can see Micron over the last 15 years or so, it's trading slightly below 1 book, around 1, slightly below in 2012, in 2016, in 2019, in 2023. And then when everyone gets excited about it and it's making a lot of money, it goes up to like 3 times book. So if I was looking at this and trying to assess whether it's undervalued or overvalued, it's really simple. It goes up and down. I want to buy low and sell high. And right now, it looks like we're at a high point. The current price to book as of 1 day ago, June 10th, was 2.62. So it's very near 3. It's absolute high. Now, of course, we could have so much AI come through and so much memory necessary for AI that it could go to 3. It could go to 4. Heck, I have no idea where it could go. It could go super high. It could also come back down. Why? Because it has historically done it 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 times, depending on how you count there, whether you look at this dip here during the plague. So, honestly, when I look at this, I could say it could be potentially overvalued, or it could be potentially undervalued because there's going to be so much AI. It's really, really hard to tell. But if I want a large enough margin of safety, if I want to get it super cheap, I probably need to wait until there's a panic and buy it near 1, a price of 1 to the book value. So if I was considering Micron here, that's what I would be waiting for. Now, I could miss the boat and it could keep going higher and higher and higher, but I like to invest for the long term. And if the memory market is going to expand and expand and expand, this is a company that I want to bet on, but I want to bet on it at the right time. And if I just look at this historically, it is trading higher. Now, of course, that doesn't mean it can't continually trade higher and trade higher for a new foreseeable future. I don't know the answer to that. But this entry point could lead towards easily a halving in the stock if historical trends play out. But if AI has broken those historical trends, it could go completely higher. It could go bananas. It's really... This part is in the too hard pile. But I will say, based on these historical metrics, I don't think it's undervalued here. But I have no idea if it's overvalued. Based on all this, I think there are better opportunities in the market. And if you want to know what they are, watch this video.